Not a day goes by when the wrestling world doesn't throw up some kind of rumor, from purported storyline plans and the contract status of a performer to more salacious stuff like a backstage beef or juicy love triangle. Wrestling rumors typically land somewhere on the scale from "yeah, that definitely happened" to "are you out of your friggin' mind on crack?" And today we are going to look at the latter. Because sometimes our suspension of disbelief is stretched just a little bit too far, but not everyone else's. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 ridiculous wrestling rumors people actually believed. Join us. Number 10, the third man on a mission. The professional wrestling industry changed forever at WCW's 1996 Bash at the Beach pay-per-view when Hulk Hogan turned heel and joined Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to form the New World Order in the show's main event. Prior to the show, however, there was much speculation as to who the third man would be. And in the July 1st edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer reported that Hall, Nash, and Eric Bischoff were discussing various names, with the 1995 King of the Ring winner Mabel emerging as the top candidate after Crush was considered and then dismissed. That's right, Mabel, the former Men on a Mission member who was considered such a disappointment after his fleeting run on top that WWE were more than happy to see him go. Because it was reported in The Observer, some fans expected Mabel to join the Outsiders as a former WWE guy intent on taking WCW down from the inside. Of course, it later emerged that while there were doubts as to whether Hogan would go through with the angle and WCW had Sting waiting in the wings, the Hulkster was always the plan. Number 9, Squirrels to the nuts. There were few characters in professional wrestling, either in front of the camera or behind the scenes, quite like Sid. From bringing a squeegee to a bar fight with Brian Pillman to allegedly soiling his trunks while taking a tombstone piledriver in the main event of WrestleMania 13, there was rarely a dull moment when the master and ruler of the world was around. While those stories are believable, and in the case of Squeegeegate have been backed up by witness accounts, there is one Sid urban legend that has never been verified that people still tend to believe. The popular rumor says that the former world champion traveled with a squirrel while on the road with WCW in the early 1990s. Weird enough as that may be, the story goes that Sid was once dared by a member of the locker room to put the pet in his pants for a minute. He obliged, only to have the squirrel bite his bollocks, causing the big man to fall to the ground in pain. According to the legend, Sid needed a rabies shot and stitches after doing the job to the woodland critter, but nobody has actually verified any of this. Number 8, a rude awakening. Ravishing Rick Rude was one of the many wrestlers from a particular era who passed away before his time, a consequence of a hard-living lifestyle and choices he made with regards to certain substances he indulged in. The 40-year-old former Intercontinental Champion's official cause of death was heart failure, with the autopsy report noting that he had overdosed on several prescription medications. The overdose led some, including several of his contemporaries, to believe that Rude died by his own hand. The likes of Jake Roberts, the Honky Tonk Man, and Ken Patera contend that Rick fell into a depression and OD'd intentionally because doctors had told him that he would have to get his penis amputated. You heard me. The rumor is that after Rude injected Viagra into it, his penis and testicles became infected and doctors saw no other option but to operate. Some versions of the rumor suggest that the op had already happened at the time of Rude's death. Bruce Pritchard, on the other hand, has dismissed this long-standing urban legend as extremely silly, noting that he spoke to Rick's widow, Michelle, the day after she found him, and that she said it was an accidental overdose as he was medicating to deal with both wrestling injuries and those recently suffered in a car crash. Number 7, Vince McMahon is going blind. It could be said that at times Vince McMahon was blinded by ego, or blinded by revenge, or blinded by his love of toilet humor. He seemed to be blinded by that last one quite a bit. In 2015, however, a post on Reddit had everybody convinced that Vince McMahon was actually going blind, like in the eyes. According to the post, Vince had to be directed to the ring by a spotlight during Pat Patterson Appreciation Night in Montreal, then had to be helped into and out of the ring by crew members, seemingly because he couldn't see where he was going. Due to this account and McMahon's advancing age, coupled with the fact that he already wore glasses backstage, the internet was convinced that WWE's then owner was losing his vision. WWE quickly debunked the rumor, however, even if fans pointed to a clip of McMahon seemingly searching for Brock Lesnar before a WrestleMania as further evidence that his eyes had gone to the dogs. Number 6, a very friendly Rey Mysterio. A A few WCW alumni found themselves in romantic relationships with actual honest-to-goodness celebrities. Stacey Keibler, for example, shacked up with George Clooney once her days in sports entertainment were over, while former WCW World Heavyweight Champion David Arquette was once married to Courtney Cox. But the wildest story involving a WCW wrestler and an actor concerned Cox's best friend and Friends co-star Jennifer Aniston. Because according to an article that appeared in an April 1997 edition of the National Enquirer, Rachel was simply gaga over none other than Rey Mysterio Jr. and apparently didn't care that he was happily married. The piece featured quotes from Mysterio, who said that wife Angie was cool with his new friendship and he vowed to get Aniston in the ring. Not like that, you filthy animals. Of course, the article was absolute twaddle with no basis in reality. The gossip rag would routinely publish made-up stories for the hell of it, though Dave Meltzer suggested that WCW themselves planted the story to get Ray some publicity ahead of a big push. Aniston would later clarify that she had never met any wrestler before, while Mysterio recounted the ribbing that came with the story's publication. Number 5, 2 Warriors. That Jim Hellwig, or to use his legal name, Warrior, was quite the character, wasn't he? Controversy was never far from the face-painted former world champion, whose work in the ring was often overshadowed by his exploits out of it. For example, his firing following SummerSlam 1991 after he had written a letter demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars from Vince McMahon, among other things, in return for him performing as advertised on the pay-per-view. Warrior would be back, of course, showing up as a surprise to help even the odds at the end of WrestleMania 8. But was it the same Ultimate Warrior fans had seen on television less than a year prior? Not according to a popular rumor at the time, it wasn't. Nope, some were convinced that this Warrior, with his slightly deflated physique and shorter hair, was actually played by a different man. Some were even convinced that it was Kerry Von Erich who was portraying this new Warrior, and not only that, but he was doing so because the original had passed away since his last WWE appearance. It doesn't take a Lanny Poffo to see that this one was not true, but people did buy into the conspiracy at the time. Number 4, Most Violent Player. When MVP decided to leave WWE in the summer of 2024, he made no secret of the fact that he wasn't a fan of the company's chief content officer, Paul Triple H Levesque, and that Levesque evidently wasn't a fan of him either. Was this a simple clash of creative philosophies and personalities, or was there something more sinister at play here? Some fans with long memories, and frankly too much time on their hands, claimed that the pair had heat dating back to an incident that took place in 2008. According to a rumor that sprung up on the old WrestleCrap forum, MVP once attacked the game in the shower with a screwdriver. Per the rumor, this was the reason why MVP was given a pronounced losing streak on TV. Now, we all know wacky things happen backstage in WWE from time to time, including fights between wrestlers. But if anybody seriously thinks that a wrestler trying to shank a top star, never mind the owner's son-in-law, wouldn't result in their immediate firing, well, I have some magic beans you might be interested in. MVP himself later called the story his favourite dirt sheet rumour. Number 3, the work of the century? The 1997 Survivor Series was home to one of the most controversial WWE, nay, professional wrestling moments of all time, as Steve Blackman was unjustly counted out and thus eliminated from his traditional Survivor Series tag match. Oh, and there was also some sort of commotion in the main event. But still, where's the justice for Steve? In all seriousness, the Montreal Screwjob has been examined to death at this point and has been brought back to life multiple times, only to be examined to death over and over again. And really, what more is there to say? Except, of course, that the whole thing was a big elaborate work, you gullible marks. Yes, there is a popular theory that persists to this day that Bret Hart was in on the finish of his main event match with Shawn Michaels, despite a mountain of evidence to the contrary. Many wrestlers and wrestling personalities still swear that the three men conspired to pull off the greatest work ever for reasons, I guess. However tenuous those reasons are, some remain convinced that what happened that night in Montreal was all for show and that Hart, Michaels and McMahon laughed all the way to the bank, I guess. Number 2, Machos Madness. In late 1994, Randy Savage left WWE to join WCW. Unlike many who had made the same move or done worse to raise the ire of Vince McMahon, the Macho Man never returned to the company in any capacity between then and his death 17 years later. Savage's absence from all things WWE, not to mention the company's refusal to acknowledge and put over his many accomplishments, led to all sorts of speculation about just why Randy was persona non grata, with one rumor standing out above the others. Many are convinced that Savage was exiled because he had a physical relationship with a then 17-year-old Stephanie McMahon, and that when her father found out about it, he vowed to never work with him again. Once again, there's no actual evidence to substantiate this wild rumor, which has taken on a life of its own thanks to the internet. Randy never commented on it, though he did tell Triple H that he would take his girl while cutting a promo on him in the early 2000s, and Stephanie sure as hell hasn't commented on it either. Though there is evidence to the contrary, such as the fact that WWE and Savage were negotiating his potential return in 1996, some people still believe Match was banished forever for sleeping with the boss's daughter. Number 1. The Mercenary. Vince Russo sent to destroy WCW. In October of 1999, WWE head writer Vince Russo let the company know that he was leaving for rival WCW. Burnt out and displeased with having another new show, SmackDown, added to his workload, Russo and his partner in crime Ed Ferrara decided to take an offer from WCW, who was struggling bad and believed that Russo and Ferrara, two of the architects of WWE's wildly popular Attitude Era, would be the solution to their problems. Well, WCW were dead wrong, of course, because Russo and Ferrara, without Vince McMahon and others to rein them in, actually did the opposite and helped further damage WCW's credibility with its rapidly diminishing audience. But hey, that was the plan all along now, wasn't it? Because some people would have you believe that Vinnie Roo, and to a lesser extent future WCW Cruiserweight Champion Oklahoma, was sent there by Vince McMahon and WWE to destroy the competition from the inside. Now, I'm not saying that sending a mole to book endless pole matches and brain-dead storylines isn't a sound strategy, but it took a lot more than that to put WCW out of business, and Russo himself has dismissed the theory as fantasy. So it's obviously not true. But imagine if it was. What a swerve that would be, bro.